Mail-order bride arrived to find 7 children and no husband, but she became the mother they wished for. Maria had always dreamed of a new life in America. Growing up in a small town in the Philippines, she had listened to stories of opportunities and freedom, of quiet streets lined with trees, of houses with big windows that let the sunlight in. She imagined herself walking in those streets, living a peaceful life and perhaps starting a family of her own. When she had first heard about the chance to marry an American man, she felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The letters had been long and detailed. The man promised her a safe, happy life. He had written about his small house, his quiet town, and how he longed for someone to share it with. Maria had been cautious, of course. She knew that promises were not always real, but there was something about this opportunity that felt like hope. She packed her few belongings, hugged her family tightly, and boarded a plane she had dreamed of taking for years. The journey itself was long and tiring. Maria spent hours staring out of the airplane window, watching the clouds drift past like pieces of cotton in a vast blue sky. She thought about the life she was leaving behind, the small house with its bright yellow walls, the garden her mother tended, the narrow streets she had walked every day, and the friends she would miss. Her heart ached at leaving them, but at the same time, a small spark of excitement glimmered inside her. She imagined stepping off the plane, being greeted with smiles, and finding a place where she could belong. When Maria finally arrived, it was late in the afternoon. The small town was quiet, with streets that seemed almost empty compared to the crowded markets of her home. She took a deep breath as she walked toward the house her future husband had described in his letters. Her suitcase wheels rattled over the pavement, and she could feel the nervous energy building inside her. She rehearsed what she would say, imagining his smile, the way he would welcome her. But when she reached the house, there was no one there. The door was unlocked, and she stepped inside, expecting to hear a familiar voice, to see a welcoming smile. Instead, she was met with silence. At first, Maria thought she had arrived too early. She set her suitcase down and looked around the house. It was bigger than she had imagined from the pictures he had sent. The walls were painted a soft cream color, and the sunlight from the large windows filled the living room with warmth. There were toys scattered on the floor, small cars, stuffed animals, and a few coloring books. The smell of cooking faintly lingered in the air, though it seemed the kitchen had not been used recently. Maria's heart beat faster. She could hear laughter from upstairs, soft but unmistakable. She moved toward the staircase, hoping that perhaps the children she had not known about yet would be with her husband. As she reached the top of the stairs, she saw them, 7 children, each with their own expression of surprise, confusion, and caution. They stared at her with wide eyes. Some hid behind doors, peeking out carefully. The youngest, a little boy with curly hair, clutched a teddy bear to his chest and stepped forward cautiously. The oldest, a teenage girl, crossed her arms and looked at Maria as if trying to measure her, deciding whether she was friend or stranger. Maria froze for a moment. She had expected a husband, not children. And certainly not 7. She had imagined a family eventually, but this was far beyond what she had planned for. The children did not speak. Maria tried to smile, hoping to show them that she meant no harm. She introduced herself softly. "Hello, my name is Maria. I'm here to meet your father."
Silence followed.
Then a small voice spoke from the back. "He's not here." "Not here?" she repeated, trying to keep her voice calm. The little boy nodded, his eyes wide and serious. "He left," he whispered. "He said he wouldn't be back." For a moment, Maria felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath her. She sank onto a chair, her mind spinning. The man she had traveled halfway across the world to meet had abandoned the family. She looked at the children again, and their faces seemed to tell a story of hurt, confusion, and resilience. These were not strangers. These were children who had been waiting for someone to care for them, someone to guide them, someone to love them like a parent should. The days that followed were some of the hardest Maria had ever experienced. She stayed in the house, unsure what to do. The children watched her closely, testing her with small challenges, refusing to eat the food she prepared, hiding when she tried to help, ignoring her attempts at conversation. Maria had never been around so many children at once. She had helped with her younger siblings back home, but 7 children, all at different ages and with different needs, was something she had never imagined. She felt overwhelmed, exhausted, and sometimes, she admitted to herself, afraid. But Maria also noticed something beautiful. Even in their fear and confusion, the children were full of life. Their laughter could fill a room when they played together. Their curiosity about the world was endless. She watched as they climbed trees in the yard, chased each other across the grass, and helped each other solve small problems. There was love among them, even without a parent to guide it. and Maria felt a spark of determination. She could not change what had happened, and she could not bring back their father, but she could be there for them. She could be someone they could trust. She could be a mother, even if it was not the way she had planned.
Maria began small.
She learned each child's name, their favorite foods, their favorite games. She spent time listening to them, asking about their day, reading stories to the youngest, helping the older ones with homework. She did not try to replace their father. She did not pretend she could fix everything. She simply showed up every day, ready to help and ready to care. Slowly, the walls the children had built around themselves began to crumble. One afternoon, Maria sat with the children in the living room. The youngest had his head on her lap, and the others were drawing pictures at the table. For a moment, everything was quiet except for the scratching of pencils and the soft hum of the afternoon sun through the windows. Maria realized then that she had found a place in this house, even without a husband. She had arrived expecting one thing and found another entirely, but perhaps this was exactly what she was meant to find. The first weeks were still filled with challenges. There were tears, arguments, and days when Maria felt like giving up. She missed her family and the life she had left behind. She worried about money and how she would provide for everyone. She worried about the future. But she also noticed small victories. The smile of a child she helped with homework, the laughter during a game, the hug she received unexpectedly from the little boy who had once clutched his teddy bear in fear. Each small victory gave her hope. Maria knew that she could not change the past. She could not bring back the father who had left. But she could offer something just as important: love, patience, and stability. She could be there when the children needed someone. She could teach them kindness, courage, and resilience. And in doing so, she realized she was also learning. She was learning about strength she did not know she had, about the power of care, and about the unexpected forms that family could take. By the end of the first month, Maria began to feel like she belonged in the house. The children had started to speak to her more openly, asking questions, sharing stories, and even joking with her. She had found her rhythm, balancing work, care, and play. And though the road ahead was still uncertain, Maria felt a deep sense of purpose. She had arrived in a place she never expected, faced challenges she could never have imagined, and discovered a new kind of love, one that did not require promises or guarantees, only presence and heart. Maria's journey had just begun. She did not know what the future held, but she knew one thing clearly: she would not leave these children. She would face each day with courage, patience, and love. She would become the mother they needed, even if it meant starting from scratch, even if it meant learning and growing alongside them. In a world full of uncertainty, she had found a chance to make a difference. And in that, she found hope, purpose, and the first glimmer of happiness in a life she had only dreamed about. After the first few weeks, Maria began to settle into the rhythms of the house. She had learned each child's name and age, and she had started to understand their personalities, quirks, and fears. There was little Emma, the shyest of them all, who rarely spoke above a whisper, hiding behind the couch whenever someone new entered the room. Then there was Sam, the oldest boy, who tried to act tough but secretly worried about his siblings. Little Daniel, the toddler, had endless energy and loved to chase shadows across the floor. Each child was different, but all shared a quiet longing for stability, for someone who would not leave, and for love they could trust. She could not demand that the children accept her as their mother overnight. They had been hurt, abandoned, and disappointed before, and they had every right to guard their hearts. So she began small. She made their favorite meals when she could guess them correctly, even if it sometimes meant a failed attempt or two. She sat with them at the table, sharing stories from her childhood and asking about theirs. She tried to laugh with them, even when they rolled their eyes or refused to join in. Slowly, she discovered that patience could open doors that words alone could not. The children were used to chaos, to sleeping without rules, and to guarding themselves when night fell. Maria tried reading bedtime stories, singing soft songs, and tucking blankets carefully around each child. Sometimes they pushed her away, insisting they could handle themselves. Other times, tears welled up in their eyes, unspoken questions and fears surfacing in the quiet darkness of their rooms. Maria would sit nearby, gently holding a hand or stroking a small head until they fell asleep, showing them without words that she was there to stay. Another challenge was the schoolwork. The older children had fallen behind in some subjects, and some were resistant to studying at home. Maria had never taught formally, but she remembered the lessons her teachers had once given her and tried to make learning fun. She turned math problems into games, made reading aloud a story adventure, and praised every effort, no matter how small. Slowly, she noticed the children starting to ask for her help, asking questions, and sometimes even showing pride in their progress. Maria's heart swelled with joy each time they came running to her, a small victory celebrated with hugs and smiles. Some days the children would sit quietly, but their eyes would speak volumes. They wanted to tell their stories, to be heard without judgment. Maria learned to listen more than she spoke, nodding, smiling, and asking gentle questions. She discovered how important it was to acknowledge their feelings, even the difficult ones, and to let them know it was okay to feel sad, angry, or scared. She learned that love was not just giving food or shelter, it was showing that you understood, that you cared, that you would not abandon them as their father had. The bond between Maria and the children grew slowly but surely. It was built not in grand gestures, but in small daily moments. She learned that playing a board game together could create laughter that echoed through the house. Cooking together could turn an ordinary afternoon into a memory they would treasure. Even chores became a way to connect, folding laundry while sharing stories, washing dishes while listening to jokes, sweeping the floor while holding hands and laughing at spilled soap suds. Maria realized that family was not just about living together. It was about sharing life, moments both big and small, and being present when it mattered. One rainy afternoon, Maria noticed that the children were restless, their energy trapped inside the walls of the house. She decided to create an indoor adventure. She gathered blankets, pillows, and chairs, and helped the children build a fort in the living room. They crawled inside, laughed, and shared stories as if they were explorers in a secret world. Maria watched them, feeling her heart swell with love and pride. It was moments like this that reminded her why she had come so far. The children were slowly learning that someone could care for them, that someone could be constant, and that love could be gentle but firm. Even with progress, there were setbacks. Some days, the children would resist every effort Maria made. They would argue, refuse to eat, or lock themselves in their rooms. Maria sometimes felt defeated, questioning if she was making a difference. But she reminded herself that trust was not linear. It came with steps forward and steps back. She learned to take a deep breath, stay calm, and offer patience instead of frustration. And slowly, over time, the steps forward became more frequent than the steps back. Maria also had to manage her own emotions. She missed her family and friends in the Philippines and often felt lonely. Nights were particularly hard when the quiet of the house made her worries louder. But she found comfort in small routines, a cup of tea after dinner, a quiet walk outside, or a journal where she wrote her thoughts. Writing became a way to process the challenges and remind herself why she had come. She reminded herself that every effort she made, every kind word, and every moment of patience would plant seeds of love and stability in the children's hearts. As the weeks turned into months, Maria noticed a transformation. The children were no longer just wary of her presence. They began to include her in their lives. They invited her to play, shared secrets, and even sought comfort from her during moments of fear or sadness. Emma, who had once hidden behind the couch, now sat beside Maria during story time, leaning her head against Maria's shoulder. Sam, the oldest, began to ask for advice on school projects and decisions about his friends. Even little Daniel would run to Maria first when he fell or scraped a knee. Maria realized that the walls around their hearts were slowly coming down, replaced by trust, love, and the beginnings of family. Maria also learned that laughter could heal. She discovered that humor could bridge gaps where words might fail. She started to play silly games, told funny stories, and even made faces during meals to make the children giggle. Their laughter became a soundtrack of hope in the house, a sign that the children were beginning to feel safe and happy. Maria felt a sense of accomplishment not in what she had planned, but in what had organically grown, the beginnings of a bond that could withstand difficulties, built on daily love and attention. One day, Maria decided to create a family board in the kitchen. She hung a calendar and a chart where each child could write down their achievements, tasks, or even small dreams. The children hesitated at first, unsure if this new system was for them, but Maria encouraged them gently, praising every small effort. Soon, they began to fill it with notes, drawings, and accomplishments. The board became a symbol of connection and participation, a shared space where everyone's voice mattered. Maria smiled as she watched them interact, realizing the trust and family were not just emotional, they were practical, built through shared responsibility and recognition. The seasons changed, and with each passing month, Maria felt more integrated into the children's lives. She attended school events, cheered for them at sports matches, and celebrated birthdays and small achievements with care and attention. She learned about their favorite foods, TV shows, and hobbies, and she participated actively, not as a guest, but as someone who belonged. The house, once a place of uncertainty, became a home filled with warmth, laughter, and mutual care. Maria never forgot the moment she first arrived and saw the 7 children staring at her in silence. That moment had seemed overwhelming, even frightening, but it had also been the beginning of something extraordinary. She had entered a life she never expected, faced challenges she could never have anticipated, and yet found purpose, love, and a family she could call her own. The bond she had built with the children was not perfect. It was full of challenges, mistakes, and learning moments, but it was real and it was strong. By the end of the first year, Maria had transformed not just the house, but the lives of the children. They were happier, more confident, and more trusting. They had learned that love could arrive unexpectedly, that patience could heal old wounds, and that family could be chosen, nurtured, and grown. Maria, in turn, had discovered resilience, compassion, and an unexpected joy in the chaos and laughter of 7 children. She realized that life had given her a gift she could never have imagined, the chance to be a mother in a way that was authentic, challenging, and profoundly rewarding. Maria knew the journey was far from over. There would still be challenges, disagreements, and days of frustration, but she had learned a truth that guided her every action. Love was not about perfection. It was about showing up, caring consistently, and believing in the hearts of those she loved. And with that truth, Maria faced each new day with courage, hope, and an unwavering commitment to the children who had once been strangers but were now her family. Even after months of progress, life in the house was far from easy. Maria had grown close to the children, but challenges came daily, testing her patience, resilience, and heart. The children had learned to trust her, but they were still processing the absence of their father. Emotions ran high, disagreements flared, and Maria often found herself navigating storms she had never imagined. One morning, Maria woke to find the kitchen in chaos. Pancakes were burnt, cereal spilled across the counter, and the youngest had smeared jam on the walls. She took a deep breath, reminding herself to stay calm. The children were watching her anxiously, expecting anger. Maria knew that if she yelled, it would undo the trust they had built. Instead, she knelt beside the little boy, helping him wipe the jam off the wall. She encouraged the older children to join, turning it into a team effort. Slowly, laughter replaced tension, and the mess became a lesson in cooperation rather than punishment. That day, Maria realized that patience was more powerful than anger, and that even the hardest mornings could be transformed into moments of learning and connection. Financial struggles were another constant challenge. Maria worked long hours at a small local store to provide for food, clothing, and school supplies for 7 children. Some days, she returned home exhausted, only to find more problems waiting for her. Clothes were torn, school projects forgotten, or siblings had argued fiercely over small things. She felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her, a burden heavier than anything she had known. Yet Maria never allowed herself to despair for long. She reminded herself that the children needed stability and love more than perfection. She did her best, even when the world seemed against her, and celebrated small victories whenever she could. School was another source of struggle. Some of the children were behind in reading or mathematics, and the older ones sometimes acted out because they felt frustrated and unsupported. Maria would sit with them for hours after work, patiently explaining homework problems, reading aloud, or encouraging them to try again. Sometimes the children would push back, telling her it was too hard or that they didn't care. Maria would listen, nodding, and respond gently. "I know it's hard, but I believe in you. Let's try together." Slowly, they began to improve, and the pride in their eyes when they finally understood a problem or completed a project was a reward Maria could not measure in money. Yet emotional struggles were the most difficult. There were days when the children's pain surfaced in anger or sadness. Sam, the oldest, once slammed his door after a fight with a neighbor at school. Maria knocked softly, asking if he wanted to talk. At first he refused, clenching his fists and turning away, but Maria waited, not forcing him, only showing she was there. Eventually Sam spoke, telling her about feeling abandoned, about missing a father, and about wanting to be stronger for his siblings. Maria listened, her heart breaking, but she never judged. She held him close, whispering that it was okay to feel hurt, that he was not alone, and that together they could face anything. Even Maria herself sometimes felt the strain. She missed the comforts of home, the presence of her family, and the simpler life she had known. Nights were the hardest, when the silence of the house allowed worries to grow louder. Would she always have enough money? Would the children forgive her when she made mistakes? Could she truly provide the love and guidance they needed? Maria reminded herself of why she had come. Every hardship was temporary, but the love and bond she was building with the children was lasting. She leaned on small joys, seeing their smiles, sharing a meal together, or simply feeling their trust in her gaze. to keep her spirit alive. The turning point came one afternoon when Daniel, the youngest, fell while playing in the yard. He had scraped his knee badly, and his cries echoed through the house. Maria rushed to him, cleaned the wound carefully, and held him close until he calmed down. She noticed Sam standing silently nearby, his face etched with worry. Maria pulled him into the moment, showing him how to comfort his brother, how to offer gentle words and support. In that small, painful incident, Maria realized that the children were learning more than she had imagined. Not just academics or rules, but compassion, empathy, and how to care for one another. Over time, the children began to show more confidence. They started taking responsibility for household tasks, helping each other, and looking out for their younger siblings. Maria encouraged these efforts, praising them whenever they helped without being asked. She also found creative ways to teach them about teamwork and problem-solving, turning chores into games or competitions. Slowly, the house that had once felt overwhelming and chaotic began to hum with a sense of order and cooperation. The children were learning that life could be structured and fun at the same time, and Maria felt proud of the small victories that marked progress. Laughter became a frequent visitor in the house, even during hard times. Maria learned to use humor to diffuse tension, telling jokes or pretending to be clumsy while cooking, making the children giggle uncontrollably. These moments of joy became a glue, binding them together and softening the edges of past pain. The children began to seek out Maria for comfort, advice, and fun, signaling a shift from cautious distance to genuine affection. They were beginning to see her not as a stranger but as a mother figure, someone dependable, loving, and present. Yet challenges continued to test Maria. Occasionally disagreements would escalate into shouting matches. Emma, shy and quiet, once stormed out of the kitchen after a minor argument over chores. Maria followed gently, not to punish, but to understand. She found Emma sitting alone in the garden, tears streaming down her face. Maria knelt beside her, offering a hand and a soft voice. "I know you're upset," she said. "It's okay. I'm here if you want to talk." Slowly, Emma opened up, revealing her fears about being abandoned again, her worries that she was not good enough, and her longing for someone who would truly stay. Maria listened without judgment, holding her until the tears slowed. In moments like these, Maria realized that her role was more than providing care. It was being a steady presence, a safe harbor in the storms of life. Maria also faced challenges from the outside world. Some neighbors questioned her ability to care for so many children, whispering doubts or giving unsolicited advice. Maria sometimes felt isolated, but she refused to let these opinions define her. She focused on what she could control: the home, the children, and the love she offered them. Slowly, as neighbors observed the warmth and stability she had created, their skepticism turned into quiet respect. Maria had learned that perseverance and kindness could change perceptions, and that actions mattered more than words. One evening, as the sun set over the quiet town, Maria sat in the living room with the children. They were sprawled across the floor, laughing and sharing stories of the day. For a moment, everything was still, except for their voices and the soft glow of the lamps. Maria realized how far they had come together. The house that once felt like a prison of responsibility now felt like a home filled with laughter, trust, and love. She reflected on the journey, the struggles, the setbacks, and the small victories that had built the foundation for this bond. She understood that family was not defined by blood, but by presence, care, and unwavering commitment. By the end of the year, Maria had transformed not only the house, but the lives of the children. They were happier, more confident, and more connected to one another. Maria herself had grown in ways she had never anticipated. She had learned patience, resilience, and the power of love that does not waver in the face of hardship. The bond she shared with the children had deepened, and they had begun to see her as more than a caretaker. They saw her as their mother. Maria's transformation was mirrored in the children. Sam had started to take on leadership roles among his siblings, guiding them with a gentle but firm hand. Emma had gained confidence, speaking up more and sharing her thoughts openly. Daniel, the youngest, had begun to trust in the safety of family, showing affection without fear. The house, once filled with uncertainty and chaos, now hummed with laughter, learning, and love. Maria had discovered that true family was not given. It was built, nurtured, and earned through daily acts of care, patience, and understanding. Through all the struggles, Maria never lost sight of the ultimate goal: to provide a safe, loving, and stable home for the children. She realized that being a mother was not about perfection, but about showing up, being consistent, and loving unconditionally. And as she watched the children sleeping peacefully one night, she knew that all the challenges, all the long hours, and all the moments of doubt had been worth it. She had become the mother they needed, the one who would never leave, the one who would always be there. Life was still not perfect, and there would be more challenges ahead, but Maria now understood that love, patience, and resilience could overcome even the toughest obstacles. She had discovered strength she never knew she had, and had learned that the greatest rewards often come from the hardest struggles. In the chaos and laughter of 7 children, Maria had found her purpose, her family, and a life richer than any dream she had ever imagined. The years passed, and the house that Maria had arrived in so many months ago was no longer filled with uncertainty or fear. It had become a home, vibrant with love, laughter, and the kind of warmth that comes from shared struggles and victories. Maria had grown alongside the children, and the children had grown under her care. They were no longer the cautious, wary little ones who had watched her arrival with suspicion. They had become confident, caring, and resilient, ready to face life because they had learned what it meant to belong, to be loved, and to trust. Maria watched them one morning as they prepared for school. Sam, the eldest, was helping Daniel tie his shoelaces, showing patience and gentleness he had never displayed before. Emma carefully packed her books into her bag, humming a song Maria had taught her months ago. Little Sarah, always full of energy, carried her lunchbox to the table with a grin, while the younger ones followed her lead, chattering about the day ahead. Maria's heart swelled. She had arrived in this home expecting to meet a husband, but instead she had discovered a family waiting to be nurtured. She had become the mother they had wished for, even in a home that had once seemed impossible to manage. The neighborhood had begun to recognize Maria's dedication. People who had once questioned her ability to care for so many children now smiled knowingly when they saw her walking to the store with groceries in tow, or helping the children cross the street safely on the way to school. Maria never sought recognition or praise, but she felt a quiet satisfaction in knowing that her hard work and love were visible in the children's happiness and security. The house had become a beacon, a place where children laughed freely, felt safe, and knew that someone always had their back. Maria had also found ways to celebrate the children's achievements, both big and small. She organized birthday celebrations, helped with school projects, and cheered at every performance or sports match. One afternoon, Sam came home with a certificate for excelling in a science project. Maria hugged him tightly, her eyes shining with pride. "I knew you could do it," she whispered. Sam smiled, a mixture of pride and affection in his gaze. Maria realized that these moments were more than celebrations. They were milestones of growth, trust, and love, evidence that her presence had made a difference in their lives. Emma, once the quietest and most hesitant child, had grown in confidence under Maria's guidance. She now spoke up during family discussions, shared her dreams, and even helped the younger children with homework. Maria encouraged her at every step, gently reminding her that her voice mattered, that her thoughts were important, and that she was capable of achieving anything she set her mind to. Emma's transformation was one of the greatest rewards for Maria. It was proof that love, patience, and consistent care could help a child bloom, even after years of uncertainty. The younger children, too, had changed profoundly. Daniel had learned to share, to wait his turn, and to ask for help when needed. He hugged Maria tightly every morning before school, a small but powerful sign of trust. Sarah, full of energy and imagination, had learned to channel her enthusiasm into creativity and play that included her siblings rather than leaving them behind. Each child had developed a sense of responsibility and empathy, qualities that Maria nurtured with gentle guidance and endless patience. She had created not just a household but a community of care within the walls of her home. Life was not without challenges even now. There were arguments, misunderstandings, and days when the children tested boundaries, but Maria had learned how to respond calmly, with a steady hand and a loving heart. She knew that discipline was not about punishment, but about guidance, consistency, and teaching lessons through love rather than fear. Over time, the children internalized these lessons. They began to manage conflicts themselves, support each other, and make decisions with thoughtfulness. Maria's role had evolved from caretaker to mentor, from a figure of comfort to one of guidance and leadership. One evening, as the children sat around the dining table for dinner, Maria looked around at the scene before her. The table was noisy, the children laughing and talking, occasionally spilling a drink or dropping a fork. It would have seemed chaotic to an outsider, but to Maria, it was beautiful. This was family in its raw, imperfect, and joyful form. She realized that she had arrived expecting to follow someone else's plan, but instead, she had created her own, a family built from love, patience, and perseverance. The house that had once echoed with uncertainty now rang with joy, security, and connection. Maria also reflected on her own growth. She had arrived timid, uncertain, and dependent on the promise of a man she had never met. Now she stood firmly as the anchor of a household, strong, capable, and full of love. She had learned to manage finances, organize schedules, handle conflicts, and nurture 7 unique individuals simultaneously. She had discovered a resilience and strength within herself she had never known existed. And she had found joy in giving, in teaching, in listening, and in watching the children flourish under her care. The turning point in her journey came one spring morning when Sam, the oldest, pulled Maria aside. "Mom," he said softly, using the word for the first time without hesitation, "thank you for staying, for everything." Maria felt tears well up in her eyes. All the struggles, the long nights, the worries, the sacrifices, they had led to this moment. She had not only survived the challenges, but had become the mother the children had always wished for. Her heart overflowed with love, pride, and gratitude. She pulled Sam into a hug, feeling the bond between them solidify in a way that words could not fully express. The children, too, had learned the power of family and love through Maria's example. They celebrated birthdays together, helped each other with school projects, and comforted one another during difficult times. They had begun to dream bigger, believe in themselves, and support one another in ways that had once seemed impossible. Maria had shown them that a family was not defined by who was absent, but by who showed up, who stayed, and who loved unconditionally. Maria's efforts extended beyond the walls of the house. She engaged with the local community, volunteering at school events, helping neighbors, and supporting other families who faced challenges. The children watched her, learning from her example that kindness, patience, and love could ripple outward, affecting others in meaningful ways. They began to emulate her actions, helping their peers, sharing what they had, and showing empathy toward others. Maria had not only created a family, but had taught them to carry that love into the world. As the years went by, Maria noticed the children growing into young adults. Sam had become responsible, kind, and thoughtful, ready to support his younger siblings and contribute to the household. Emma had grown confident and independent, pursuing her dreams with courage. The younger children, now older, had learned resilience, compassion, and the value of family. Each had developed into a unique individual, shaped by their experiences but strengthened by the love and guidance Maria had provided. One quiet evening, Maria sat on the porch, watching the children play in the yard. The sun was setting, casting golden light across the garden. She reflected on her journey. From the moment she arrived, expecting a husband and finding 7 children instead, to the years of struggle, growth, and love that had followed, she realized that she had found something far more precious than she had ever imagined. She had not only become a mother, but had created a family built on trust, care, and resilience. She had transformed the house into a home, the children into confident individuals, and herself into someone she had never known she could be. Maria also realized that love was not about perfection. It was about showing up, staying, and giving your heart fully, even when it was difficult. It was about teaching lessons through patience and example, offering comfort without judgment, and celebrating growth no matter how small. The bond she had created with the children was unbreakable because it had been built with intention, care, and unwavering commitment. The final confirmation of her journey came one day when Daniel, now older and more confident, came to her with a drawing. It was a picture of their family, Maria in the center, smiling, surrounded by the children, each holding hands. Above them in bright letters was written, "Our family." Maria held the drawing close, tears streaming down her face. Every sacrifice, every long night, every moment of doubt had been worth it. She had become the mother they needed, the one they wished for, and together they had built a life full of love, laughter, and hope. She had stepped into a home of uncertainty and fear and had nurtured it into a sanctuary of love. She had faced challenges she could never have imagined, yet emerged stronger, wiser, and full of purpose. The children had grown, thrived, and learned the meaning of family, not from stories or promises, but from the living example Maria had given them. And in the process, Maria herself had discovered a depth of love, strength, and joy that she had never known existed. In the quiet moments when the children were asleep and the house was still, Maria would sometimes sit and reflect. She would think of the day she first arrived, feeling lost, confused, and overwhelmed. She would smile, knowing how far they had all come. She had become the mother they had wished for, and together they had created a family built not on circumstance, but on love, dedication, and the courage to face life's challenges together. The house echoed with laughter, the children's voices carrying into every corner. Maria knew that the journey was ongoing, that life would bring more challenges, but she was ready. She had learned that the true measure of a mother was not perfection, but presence, love, and commitment. She had arrived expecting one thing, but she had found something far greater, A family, a home, and a life filled with love, hope, and endless possibility. And in that realization, Maria finally felt complete.